Well, we are live right here, only on Patreon, and we've got a very interesting episode today. It's sort of the intelligence assessment without Kevin Shipp. Kevin is experiencing some technical difficulties at the moment, but I'm pleased to be joined by Trevor Loudon. Trevor, how are you?
It's great to be on. Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me, Jason. Sorry.
No, I really appreciate you joining us. Kevin was just with me a moment ago, so I'm hopeful that he'll be able to come back to us. He's in an undisclosed location, and he's having a little bit of connectivity problems. But I've been reviewing some of your material, Trevor, and specifically the blog that you are the editor-in-chief for called New Zeal that people can go to at trevorloudon.com. Can you give our viewers a little bit of background on yourself, please?
Yeah, well, as viewers may guess, I'm from New Zealand, and I've been coming to the United States for the last 10 years, I suppose. Now, my big issue is the radical left, terrorist groups, extremist groups, Marxist groups, Muslim Brotherhood, and their connections to the mainstream political process. I say there's roughly about 100 members of the US House and 20 members of the US Senate who are so involved with foreign powers or Muslim Brotherhood front groups or Marxist Leninist groups or socialist groups that they couldn't pass they couldn't pass a background check. They couldn't get a security clearance to drive a school bus. And unfortunately, they're still serving on the Armed Services Committee and the Intelligence Committee, etc. And they are steering the country in the wrong direction every chance they get. So, I was the guy who first discovered the connection between the Hawaiian communist Frank Marshall Davis and the young Barack Obama. I also exposed Van Jones, Obama's communist green job czar, and Glenn Beck used my information and some more of my information to get him thrown out of the White House. So that's sort of where I come from, and the reason I come here is because if America goes down, so do we.
Right.
If America is no longer the leader of the free world, America gets absorbed into some sort of new world order or socialist state, every other free country goes with it.
Right. And of course, there's a very tight connection between New Zealand and the United States. New Zealand is one of the key allies in the Five Eyes, the geolocation of a satellite array over there near New Zealand has great importance to the United States and is possibly one of the motivating factors for this Five Eyes coalition. Let's talk for a minute about this connection between Frank Marshall Davis and Barack Obama. On the surface, someone observing that you're pointing out that Frank Marshall Davis was a communist, Van Jones is a communist, Barack Obama is connected to both of these guys. Obviously, the easy argument is to call you a racist. You're white, they're black. I'm not saying that. I agree with you. I think there is a striking physical resemblance between Frank Marshall Davis and Barack Obama, and I just feel like, as is the case with Justin Trudeau and Fidel Castro, if you look just like a dude and your mom was hanging out with him right around the time you were born, there's something to look at there. What can you say about this connection between Frank Marshall Davis and Barack Obama?
Look, I was not there at the time, so I don't know who Barack Obama's father was. I accept basically the narrative that he was the guy from Kenya. Until I see the DNA evidence, I'll go with what Obama says. But Frank Marshall Davis was the ideological mentor to Barack Obama. He raised him, he basically tutored him from the age of 10 to the age of 18 in Marxism, Leninism, in his whole, propaganda approach. And you can trace back most of what Obama thinks to those days. And as for that little racist charge that sometimes is made, well, I've called out Hillary Clinton, I've called out Judy Chu, I've called out a whole range of people in the US establishment for their Marxist and Muslim Brotherhood ties. So
Hello,
if
Jason.
I'm a racist, I'm an
We've
equal
got Kevin back.
opportunity racist. That's all
Sorry.
I can say.
Sorry, Trevor. We've got Kevin back here. And
Yeah, I think I
certainly-
got you guys.
There we
Hey,
go.
Kevin.
Great to have you, Kevin.
Hi, Trevor. Good to be here, man. Good to see you, man.
How are
Good
you?
to see you as well. We're talking about how Trevor has exposed the ties of Barack Obama to various Marxists, Frank Marshall Davis, Van Jones, and the obvious charge against anyone who would do that is to simply call a white guy pointing this out a racist. And I certainly don't think that. I agree with Trevor's assessment. Part of the reason I think the left chooses to do things like this, they'll pick a black man or a black female to do something that, you just can't question it because you're immediately a racist if you do. Isn't that right?
Well, that's... Yeah. Sorry, was that addressed to me or Kevin?
Either,
Jason?
please proceed, Trevor.
Well, look, the charge of racism, like the charge of McCarthyism, was invented by the communist movement to basically make it hard to attack them. The only color I care about is whether the person is a red or not. Are they a Marxist? Are they a Leninist? Do they support the Constitution or don't they? So it hasn't really featured in my work. I haven't really been, that charge hasn't come up, but it may do in soon, because my next book is going to be on what I call the rainbow conspiracy, which is the use by the left, the same people who basically were behind Obama, to reinvent Jesse Jackson's Rainbow Coalition of the 1980s and run candidates of color, especially to arouse the black and Latino base. And they're going to run Kamala Harris and Cory Booker in 2020 to do this. And right now they are running four candidates of color. That's their terminology. One in Arizona, David Garcia for the governorship of Arizona, Ben Jealous for the governorship of Maryland, Andrew Gillum for the governorship of Florida, and Stacey Abrams for the governorship of Georgia. And the last three are all black. The first is Latino. So the left are the racists. They're completely involved in identity politics. And I'm not scared to call out. And if they want to make charges to me, fine. But I'm just interested in the politics of this.
Right. And of course, Trevor, people can purchase your books at Amazon.com. You've written quite a few, The Enemies Within. And what's the name of the new book that you just mentioned?
The Rainbow Conspiracy. It's not out yet. And I've just written a book too called Burn This Book on Keith Ellison, which has just gone up on Amazon a day or two ago.
Huh. Okay. Burn This Book. Do you find it strange that the...
Sorry, guys, I'm just moving out here a little bit.
No problem. Trevor, do you find it strange that the
Go ahead.
assault allegations against Keith Ellison have been essentially ignored, while these troublesome allegations that seem to lack credibility on a number of fronts against Judge Kavanaugh are treated as a conviction right out of the gate?
Yeah, well, that's, as David Horowitz famously says, the issue is never the issue. The issue is always the revolution. Any hint of sexual impropriety or abuse committed by someone they don't like is going to be magnified out of all, magnified and shared, and the more truth behind it, the better for them, but they'll make it up anyway. And someone like Keith Ellison, who's involved in both the communist left and the Muslim Brotherhood, is a lot harder to... They're not going to touch him. They're not going to make such a big deal out of him. Though I am thinking that some of the Democrats in Minnesota, I think, may throw Keith Ellison under the bus, because other people are making an issue of this, and this could drag down their whole ticket. And I think they may be getting ready to cut Keith Ellison loose on this one.
Well, perhaps your book, Burn This Book, will play a role in that. So now that Kevin appears to be settled out of the rain and someplace safe, what we're going to do, Trevor, if you don't mind, Kevin always starts the show with a PowerPoint overview. So Kevin, if you're ready, we can go to that.
Yeah, I'm ready, Jason. Thank you, and apologize. Sue and I kind of had to do a little evac from the studio. We're up in the North Carolina mountains. There's a bit of a threat. We can talk about that later. So we're kind of up in the middle of nowhere, and finally found a connection. So we're good to go. So I want to just hit a few of these because I want to give Trevor plenty of time to talk. But this is an extremely important subject. If you, as Trevor has done quite well, do any sort of study and research on Hillary Rodham Clinton, you see that her connections, both personally as, with Secretary of State and through the Clinton Foundation, she has got global tentacles and basically would amount to foreign super PACs all over the world. And when you look at even in the CIA that we're seeing now, I'll show you in just a couple of slides before I turn it over to Trevor. The amazing thing is this all traces back to one person. I call it the Clinton crime syndicate, but this traces back to Hillary Rodham Clinton and her power structure that she and her husband has developed since they both had CIA clearances going back to their first time in the White House. And Hillary Clinton, as First Lady, by the way, having a CIA shadow government clearance was illegal. She started doing that way back then, and they built this large international network. I want to just give people a brief synopsis of this before we go on to Trevor, just to see what we have to deal with here. I don't know if you have slide transitions there, Jason. So you'll have to push the button each time to make the next graphic come up.
Do you have the screen share where you're at, Kevin?
I do. I'm seeing it on my screen. Yeah.
Okay, so we've got slide number 2.
Yeah, and you've got Clinton, and if you click on the slides have transitions in them, so we'll have to see if those. There you go. There you go. They're working beautiful. This is there's a good book out there called Year of the Rat about Bill Clinton. I remember I was in intelligence, and he turned over the technology of our spy satellites to China. But you remember the tarmac meeting where Bill Clinton and Loretta Lynch had their so-called accidental meeting. And they talked about their golf and their grandchildren. What people don't know is that Loretta Lynch actually changed her flight plans to make that meeting. And if you click again, Jason, I think another document's going to come up there. Yeah, thanks. Good. The transitions are working. That's great. These are the FBI, DOJ redacted memos of that meeting where they talked about their grandchildren and golf. Now, if it was grandchildren and golf, why do they have to black the entire thing out? And you know how I feel about that sort of thing. So I want people to see that. And as we move into this shadow government connection these two have, that was tied into the CIA when he became, unfortunately, the president of the United States. So let's move on to the next one, if you will, Jason. Yeah, go ahead and click and add each one of these. Each time you click, a face will come up. There you go. Now look at this. At the nexus of the entire false dossier, the information came from Russia. Every single one of these people that Jason is bringing up on the slide was connected to and covering for one person, Hillary Rodham Clinton, because they wanted her installed as the president of the United States. But look at this. British MI6, Christopher Steele at the top. James Clapper, the director of national intelligence. John Brennan, and there's more things coming out on John Brennan's role here with the recent redactions. You've got Samantha Powers, the UN ambassador, down on the right. You've got, of course, Peter Strzok, and then none other than James Comey, who I think eventually will be indicted, down there to the right, British GCHQ. All of these people were trying to stop Trump from getting in office and trying to take him out while he's there now, and they are all connected to, they are all protecting, and some of them are fixers, like James Comey, of one person, and that's Hillary Rodham Clinton. And she has set up global connections that are absolutely unbelievable, including foreign governments, and the impetus was Hillary Clinton, of Susan Rice down there on the left, and Samantha Power, unmasking 300 names in the Donald Trump campaign, unmasked NSA surveillance to reveal the names of U.S. citizens. all tied back into this one woman, Hillary Clinton. And you look at the surveillance that I just talked about. These are all the players that were conducting surveillance on Trump to stop him from being elected, using the power of the NSA. Some things about the NSA that are quite explosive are coming out soon, and when they do, we'll talk about some of those. All right, Jason, next one. And of course, at the center, here we go again, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, how serious this is. All righty, click on each one of these, and as we go through, I'll just discuss them briefly. Hold it right there. There you have Bill Clinton, the biggest threat to national security of any president we've ever had. He turned our satellite technology over to China, who's using it for their offensive satellites. He took millions of dollars from the Chinese government into his campaign, as did Hillary. This guy was dirty from the time that before he stepped into the White House. And it just goes to show you how easily the American people can be manipulated by the media to put this kind of rat in office. And go ahead and keep clicking, Jason. Bill Clinton, being president of the United States, immediately was briefed with the highest level classified information with the CIA. In other words, all of the family jewels. That includes the Iran-Contra affair problem. It includes Mena, Arkansas, where I am convinced he and George H.W. Bush both signed secrecy agreements and partnered together in that. But this links all the way back to his access to the CIA. And go ahead and click again. And so does she. Now, I've been saying this for a while now. Hillary Rodham Clinton, as First Lady, was given an illegal CIA clearance. First ladies don't get top secret CIA clearances. And she did that with no investigation, no background check, violated all of the DSKID regulations, and it was highly illegal. I think someone should look into that because that is a felony. Click again, Jason. And we'll talk about the Clinton Foundation in another show. It is dirty. I think I'd recommend everybody go to Charles Ortel's site and Jason's Sundays with Charles to look into the Clinton Foundation, a huge international charity fraud with multiple felonies. And okay, Jason, let's move on. Alexander Downer, Australian ambassador, funneled $45 million of Australian taxpayer money into the Clinton Foundation, and it was Alexander Downer that set up the false meeting with George Papadopoulos, where he was set up, and it began the whole Mueller probe. And we don't have time, so let's just click through these. And of course, Soros, she's connected to Soros. He put $27 million into her presidential campaign. She's a big supporter of the Islamic Muslim Brotherhood, helped them take over the government of Egypt. Keep going, Jason, and we'll just run right through them because I don't want to spend too much time. Sandy Berger was removing top secret documents from the archives for the Clintons related to 9/11. No one ever saw those documents. Berger was filmed putting them down his pants. They were destroyed, and he only got a misdemeanor from the Department of Justice, FBI, James Comey, Robert Mueller for doing that. Okay, let's keep going.
Missed the wiener, putting him down his pants.
Yeah, I'm telling you. And here you got the former national security advisor shoving top secret documents down his pants and not realizing that there were security cameras. These people are not the brightest candles in the pub sometimes. And then we have the longtime Hillary Clinton fixer, James Comey, that goes all the way back to him sitting on the Whitewater panel and on. He has been a Clinton fixer for 20 years, and we've talked about him before. She ran guns illegally in violation of the U.S. law and international law into Benghazi, into Tripoli, using Saudi Arabia and Qatar's cutouts. Those arms wound up through Benghazi into the Free Syrian Army, a Muslim radical army that the U.S. was supporting. The Free Syrian Army, those guns wound up in the hands of Al-Qaeda. She armed Al-Qaeda, and many of those heavy weapons and even some tanks and artillery are now in the hands of guess who? ISIS. And it was all started with this woman here secretly running guns into Libya. Loretta Lynch has covered for her. She covered her investigation into the secret server by changing it from a criminal investigation to a matter and stopping the entire criminal investigation. Down here you got Peter Strzok. I think we all know about him. We can move on. Click on the next one. And then we've got the willing media. You and I did a show on them. We'll do another one where we get into greater detail about the Clinton connection to the media and their editors. And up to the right, there you have none other than David Brock, who runs Media Matters, the Soros-funded group that funds the the mainstream media, much of it, and manipulates a lot of the news next to Lady Rothschild. All right. What do we got next?
It's a blue line. There we go.
Yeah, okay. And we're just going to do a couple more here. International crime syndicate, espionage, money laundering, drug running, charity fraud, blackmail, and murder are connected to Hillary Rodham Clinton and Bill Clinton. There is plenty of facts, plenty of evidence out there to convict this woman. Of course, she's connected to the new international world order. That's what Barack Obama called it. That is actually Susan Rice's own words, the new international world order, because the new world order doesn't fly anymore. People are kind of onto that. Their progressive belief is to usurp the United States Constitution and eliminate U.S. sovereignty. That's Soros's big deal. And it involves, I call it the dark left, the DNC. It's not the Democratic Party of John F. Kennedy. It's gone dark, and they're supporting most things that the average American would be completely against. It's not the same Democratic Party. So I know I'm moving kind of fast here, but I want to give Trevor some time also. This involves, and this is what is most alarming, this involves, her network involves the CIA, the FBI, the NSA, and the United Kingdom, GCHQ, their NSA, and their MI6 tied into the Clinton crime syndicate. It is massive, it is illegal, it is fraudulent, and deadly dangerous at times. Okay, we're going to talk about uranium-1, then I'm going to go down to the last slide here, and I'll let you know. What people don't know about uranium-1 is Robert Mueller was conducting a counterintelligence investigation of Russian operations at the time and let the uranium-1 investigation go with no prosecutions. There was bribery and extortion that the Russians were doing, and Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton were targets of a Russian espionage operation. As we know, they sold 20% of our uranium. What people don't know is $145 million from a Russian uranium-1 connected company was donated into the Hillary Clinton presidential super PAC. $145 million went through uranium-1 into Clinton's presidential super PAC. That's foreign money. So, and you can just click right through this. This is very serious. Uranium-1 was not just selling uranium. It was worse than that. It was funding Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign with foreign money. Okay. We can move on, and once again, my apologies. We're up in the middle of nowhere. Okay, keep going, Jason, and we'll just go to the next one. I talk about the contributions into the Clinton Foundation through Russian money through uranium-1. We all know the Russian collusion is not Trump. It's Hillary Rodham Clinton to the point where it's disgusting. And we'll just scroll through those and let people see them.
It's totally illegal for these foreign donations to come, right? They got to be registered and all that stuff?
It is illegal for that to happen. What she did, what they did, and there's a whole cabal network of this syndicate, what they did was have the $145 million and other millions of dollars deposited in foreign banks for her campaign. Since they're in foreign banks, U.S. rules didn't apply. Congress couldn't subpoena any of the documents, and they are not subject to Freedom of Information Act requests. So they are immune from any sort of U.S. investigation, and that's why she did it.
We're a little jammed up on the PowerPoint for some reason, Kevin. I got the spinning thing, and I can't get it to advance. So let me see if I can address this in some way. Wow, it's totally, I'm totally out of commission here. It says it isn't responding right now. Do you want to wait or quit? Let me try and start this again. Sorry, I'm not sure what's going on there.
No worries. We can quit. We can quit if we have to. No worries, because we're almost done anyway.
Okay. Yeah, it just crashed. So maybe let's get right back into our discussion with Trevor. Trevor, what do you think about the stuff that Kevin's telling us here?
Look, I think it's right on point. I think Hillary Clinton is the centerpiece of an international crime and subversive syndicate. We know that the Clintons are involved with the Chinese and the Russians and the Muslim Brotherhood. Anybody who hates America, they're there. And I think they have been working against America right from their earliest days, right from their 20s. Now, Hillary Clinton's first job out of college was with a Communist Party law firm, not a liberal law firm or a progressive law firm, but Ted Truhaft's communist law firm in San Francisco. We know her background with Saul Alinsky, how she admired that man, and he was basically the American Lenin. We know that she's appointed several radicals to positions over periods of time, and Bill himself was, in Moscow, was a very early young man, and spent time in Czechoslovakia with a Czech communist family on the way back from Moscow. Neither of these people could pass any legitimate security background check.
That's right.
At all. You would know that, Kevin. And they're not the only ones in the US government in that position, but Bill Clinton really opened it up. He really abolished the need for background checks for a lot of White House staff. And Barack Obama used that opening to bring in people like, Van Jones and many, many others, including Valerie Jarrett, who also would never pass a background check. Huh. So they really did open the country up. It really has turned particularly bad since the Clintons, and Hillary Clinton would have finished the job had she become president, I'm sure.
It really is kind of an iterative process, right, guys? I mean, it's sort of established. Aren't the Bushes involved in some way in this, gentlemen? Did George H.W. set the stage for all this to happen, bring in Bill through the Iran-Contra, Mena, Arkansas enterprise, and sort of hand him the keys to the candy shop and tell him someday this is all going to be yours?
Well, in my view, of course, I was in the agency back in the days of Iran-Contra. In my view, George H.W. Bush, who has a long sordid past with the CIA, by the way, going all the way back to the JFK assassination. But yes, I believe the two of them were working hand in hand, and George H.W. brought William Jefferson Clinton into the fold, so to speak. I think he signed a secrecy oath. I think he was given a clearance, and that's when they were bouncing drugs through Mena. And if you notice, they were supposedly arch political enemies. George H.W. Bush and Bill Clinton hated each other's guts, but now you see them hugging each other and like they're best buddies and best friends. Well, it's because they both ran the same operation illegally and in secret, and they both know about it. So now if you stay, your friend is closer than an enemy, and if they both keep their mouths shut and protect each other. So yeah, I think George H.W. Bush brought William Jefferson Clinton into the fold, so to speak.
Now, Kevin, we had a guest just the other day who was talking about Hale Boggs' last fateful flight from Alaska, where his plane went down. There was never an investigation, no wreckage recovered from that crash. And we've heard the son, I forget who the other passenger on the plane was, but his son has given testimony that Bill Clinton drove Hale Boggs to the plane. Do you know anything about that? How did that come about? Did you hear anything in the CIA about that, or Trevor, are you aware of that?
Go ahead, Trevor.
No, look, I was not aware of that. I know who you're talking about, but I wasn't aware of that connection.
Yeah, it's so compartmented in the CIA that there were things that were going at the top, and I was on the 7th floor in the director's suite, as were the other agents, and there were things the agency were doing we didn't even know about, and we're standing right next to the director. I do know this, that plane crashes are the #1 favorite for assassination, without a doubt. You remember the Uranium-1 jet that just went down in Moscow with all the Uranium-1 execs on board, killed everybody on board. Plane crashes are obviously completely lethal. They burn up, they explode, and there's no crime scene, virtually no crime scene evidence left. It's a favorite assassination tool, and if you go back to the people connected to the Clintons, the Bushes, and others, all the way up to Uranium-1 in the present, you'll see plane crashes littered all through there.
And just to speak to sort of methods and practices and stuff like that, I think, from what I observe, it looks like there's a lot of aspects of this type of integration into the deep state that are just exactly a gang initiation. So, in other words, if Bill Clinton will do this little, task, drive a guy to the airport and not say anything, this is sort of how someone gets stepped up the ladder.
That's right, and it's a kind of, or at least they're led to believe, it's a progression that you can never return from. I signed those agreements. I got those internal compartmental clearances, and it was pretty clear you violate your secrecy oath and the upper level secrecy oaths, and you're done. You're destroyed, and you're in prison. So that's what everybody goes through. It's considered the path of no return. So if they signed those secrecy oaths, which they would have if they had any connection with George H.W. and the CIA, they would sign the secrecy oath, and it would be death or prison if they walked away from it. So you can count on that.
Right. So let me bring you guys all this information back to today, because we see obviously Brett Kavanaugh working to get confirmed into the Supreme Court. It stands to reason that, we're talking about some unprecedented crimes in the history of our country. If Donald Trump succeeds in, starting some prosecution against these people, would the Supreme Court be involved? Do we see a strategic play here where some of the people that we're talking about are working potentially behind the scenes to block Kavanaugh from getting confirmed? Trevor, is there any indication of that?
Well, obviously they are, but the picture is, it's very obvious, that the left wants to win the next election. If they can win in 2018, then they can start to impeach the president. No wall gets built. They can hold the president. They're not going to convict him, unless some Republicans flip, and that's not beyond the realms of possibility. Some Republican senators may do that, but they aim to tie him up in knots and slow his agenda down so that they can win big in 2020 and get back on track. Because as Obama said, President Trump was just a bump on the road. Don't worry about this. We'll get back on track. We'll go towards globalism. We'll go towards bringing America down, as long as we can just limit President Trump to one term and make sure he doesn't get a lot done. So the Kavanaugh attack is just part of of course they don't want a conservative on the Supreme Court. Of course they want to denigrate President Trump, dispirit his supporters, slander him in any possible way they can. So they're going to attack anybody who is in any way possibly going to allow Trump to be reelected, or to rule against the left, or to try and restore the Constitution. And Kavanaugh, I'm not as enamored with Kavanaugh as some conservatives are. I think he's got some problems in his background, but
a little too fond
it
of
was
spying.
It was very predictable that he's very too far into the establishment, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But this was very predictable.
Yeah. It's kind of an attack on the Constitution itself, isn't it, Kevin? We had a senator just yesterday openly telling the people of the United States that apparently, according to her, everyone has the right to be believed. Now, I reviewed the Constitution today. I did not see that listed in there. As far as I'm aware, we do have the right to be presumed innocent until some accuser proves that we're guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Do you think that's a dangerous statement, Kevin, for a senator to openly declare that people have rights that we do not actually have?
Extremely dangerous. It shows you where that senator and some of the other Democratic and Rhino Republican senators are coming from. Departure from the Constitution. That's what she just did. That's what they are doing when they say these things. And of course, the Supreme Court's going to rule on First and Fourth Amendment issues, of which all of this is involved. And then let me step off the PC boat for a second here. The big thing here is this edifice that they worship, Planned Parenthood, and abortion up, killing till the month of pregnancy, spinal cord with a scalpel. A lot of this is about being burned and removing, I think, what is it, $500 million a year, 6 figures. So that's a part of it. If Kavanaugh gets on the court, Roe versus Wade is in trouble. The huge abortion industry is in trouble. The U.S. pushing abortion on other countries as part of globalism is in trouble. I mean, this is the dark against, it's not the right against the left. I think it's like the dark against the light. That's what is at stake with this one, and it's symbolic of the battle, kind of the civil war that's going on in this country that we're seeing played out. Maybe they'll call it the Kavanaugh principle or something in the future. We're seeing a civil war happen in this public trial, this public kangaroo trial.
Yeah, it's true.
Yep.
I just saw the other day, Trevor, that President Trump terminated some program where I guess the FDA or somebody was buying body parts from these aborted fetuses. I want to be clear, I do support a woman's right to choose what she does with her body, but I am very troubled by the sort of commercialization of this business of killing children. It's a pretty difficult topic.
Well, yeah, and there's, Kevin is completely right. This has major implications for the globalists because, the globalists, they are a culture of death. Euthanasia, abortion are all in their armory because they only want people living who are going to contribute to their one world order. And there's too many people on the world, according to them. Socialism can't support a large population. But the other factor is that the Planned Parenthood is a huge donor to the Democratic Party. So American taxpayers' money goes into Planned Parenthood, which then funds a whole raft of Democratic candidates. So, yeah, it's no wonder they're very upset about this because this is a major cash cow for them. They're upset on every front.
Yes, and also Planned Parenthood, being kind of the nexus of this, is now funding transgender studies to second graders and sixth graders in U.S. Schools. So they're telling, hey, little Johnny, you may be little Janie. And here's a kid in the second grade that has no idea necessarily what their identity is. But Planned Parenthood is funding that to second and sixth graders.
Wow.
And it's all tied back into this kind of disgusting vacuum of morals or ethics, and kind of what irks me is American women especially have been lied to about the government won't lay its hands on my body or I want freedom of choice. They're being used for global and U.S. population control. They need to understand that they're being used to play into this system of population reduction and population prevention under these so-called terms of women's right to choose, women's health, whatever else is out there to kind of up what is going on. But I think women they're waking up that they have been used. These terms have been fed to them to allow this huge industry to continue and these things to happen. And a lot of women are starting to get upset and they're getting tired of terms being thrown around when there's a whole lot more behind it.
Gentlemen, correct me if I'm wrong, but I observe that it seems to be a standard practice to align whatever item on the agenda they want to push with some really emotionally polarizing topic. Like here we see, it's not just a false accusation. Well, if it is, it still remains to be seen. I feel so far like it is. But it's a false accusation of sexual assault. So that immediately polarizes anyone who has ever been a victim of sexual assault is going to be just so emotionally disrupted by this that it's difficult for them to make an intellectual decision. Same thing about this abortion subject. I agree with what you're saying, Kevin. It seems like they like to really rile people up on these emotional subjects so that they can't make an intellectual decision. Trevor, what can you say about the rise of this democratic socialism? It's the trendiest thing. If you're 20, you got to be a democratic socialist and get a job for the government so you can not do your job and get interviewed by James O'Keefe.
Well, that's right. And Democratic Socialists of America has hit the headlines in a number of ways recently. The Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was tipped out a socialist Republican, Joe Crowley in New York, and you've got James O'Keefe's exposés of many of these people working in the government, actively working. They're the low level of the deep state, and they're actually working to sabotage the Trump agenda in any way they can. Now, we need to understand Democratic Socialists of America has many interesting connections. It has a formal alliance with the Communist Party USA. Democratic Socialists of America, by the way, is 50,000 strong now. It has a formal alliance with the Communist Party USA, which supports China. It has a formal alliance with the Freedom Road, a socialist organization, the people who gave us Black Lives Matter and black white privilege, etc. And they also have an alliance with the Chinese. Democratic Socialists of America is also being trained by an organization called the Rosa Luxemburg Foundation, or in German, the Rosa Luxemburg Stiftung. Now, that is a German-based organization that has a branch in New York, and they are funding and training Democratic Socialists of America members. The Rosa Luxemburg Foundation is run by a group in Germany called Die Linke, which means the left. It is the old East German Communist Party. You know, the Berlin Wall, Erich Honecker, machine gunning people trying to escape. Wow. Several leaders of the Rosa Luxemburg Foundation are former acknowledged Stasi informants.
Wow.
They are informants for the East German Communist Party. That's why I see you brought it up there, the East German Communist Party. These people are Stalinists, yet they are funding the Democratic Socialists of America. Recently, in Baltimore, Maryland, the Congressional Progressive Caucus, which is about 80 members strong now, had a meeting in Baltimore with Elizabeth Warren and several others. It was their annual retreat. They had several people from German, Spanish, and Greek communist parties there, organized by the Rosa Luxemburg Foundation. Democratic Socialists of America was there as well. So you have about 80 members of your US Congress working with an organization run by former East German communists.
That's right.
With Spanish, German, and Greek communists as well, and British communists, all working together to move the Democratic Party to the far left. DSA, the Communist Party USA, Freedom Road Socialist Organization, number about 57,000 members. And they are taking over the bottom ranks of the Democratic Party right now like you would not believe. And it's not as though this is young communists taking away the Democratic Party from moderates. This is young communists taking the Democratic Party away from old socialists.
Wow.
So you're having a real militant takeover of the Democratic Party now, just in time for the 2018 and 2020 elections. If they get power one more time, you will have hardcore Marxists running this country right across the length of right across the Democratic Party from the top to the bottom, and you will have a very marginalized Republican Party full of rhinos willing to capitulate to this. So this is a pretty serious situation. Democratic Socialists of America, it's not a bunch of silly college kids, who are in love with Bernie Sanders. These people are connected to hardcore communists, and they are using their sort of soft image to do what the Communist Party never could achieve.
Let's talk about that. Sorry, Kevin. Let's expand on that for a second, because I think they're being actually quite effective. When I speak to younger people, I was a Bernie Sanders supporter early when, during the primaries. I thought he said a lot of things that sounded good. And, you guys are a little older than I am. I remember being a kid, Ronald Reagan on the TV talking about the Soviet Union and communism and it being an evil empire. I think what they're doing that is succeeding is they're linking Marxism with feminism and equal rights and equality for everyone basically, but they're sort of candy coating it. If you both could help me and the audience understand, some of the things about communism sound like things that people would want. The government paying for health care, the government paying for college, those things sound all right. Give us a sort of an elevator pitch as to what the danger of socialism is.
Well, I could kick off on that. See, you got to understand that Bernie Sanders, for instance, has worked with the Communist Party his entire career. He has worked with the Palestine Liberation Organization. He has worked with the Nicaraguans and the Cubans. Bernie Sanders is a communist. There's no question about that. But people say, well, so what? Communism is just a Che Guevara T-shirt. It's all the freedom we have now, but we have socialized healthcare, and that's great, right? Well, you know, Bernie Sanders has attracted a lot of young people, just like Ron Paul attracted a lot of young people by correctly calling out what is wrong with America. He's called out the corporatism. He's called out the deals between the top ranks of the Democrat Party and the Republicans. He's talking about the corruption. He's talking about the growing gap between rich and poor. All of these things are legitimate problems. But Bernie's solution is to make them way, way, way worse. You know, the real solution to these problems is to restore the US Constitution, get rid of corporate socialism, and get back to a real basic free market system where people, you know, actually compete for the public dollar, you know, not cartel type operations, but actually free market situations. So we need a lot less government, not a lot more. And I want to just, because I come from a country that had socialized healthcare, has always had it my entire life. And I want to just get people to realize what is wrong with it. Now, if you're in a free market healthcare system, and I understand it's not free market in America, but at least you still have elements of it. You know, your doctor makes money by keeping you wealthy and prosperous and in work and living as long as possible. He has a very strong vested interest in keeping you okay. But if you're in a socialized healthcare system, think of it this way. There will be a fixed budget set by the government. The government's going to pay all the healthcare bills, but that's going to be a fixed budget. It might be $4 trillion a year, whatever it is, $1 trillion a year, but it will be fixed. And that will be allocated out to various states on a pro rata basis. So every hospital will have a fixed budget. But healthcare needs are unlimited. Now you imagine you're living in Christchurch, New Zealand, where I come from. The oncology department at Christchurch Public Hospital has a budget every year of $20 million for chemotherapy or cancer treatment. You've got a 7-year-old girl in this bed who's got leukemia. You've got a 75-year-old guy in this bed who's got prostate cancer. It's getting towards the end of the financial year and your budget's running a little bit low. You've only got enough money to treat one of them because each one of them's going to take $60,000 worth of treatment and you're running out of money. So you got $60,000, right? You got to treat both of them. So the 7-year-old girl, if you treat her, she's going to grow up, she's going to get married, have children, pay taxes. The 75-year-old guy is going to live maybe another 3 or 4 years, never contribute any more taxes, and will be a drain on the system till he dies. The decisions, all medical decisions under socialized healthcare are made by accountants. Forget doctors, it's accountants who make the decisions. So you can only treat one of these people, the 7-year-old girl or the 75-year-old guy. What do you think you're going to do?
Yeah. No,
you can only run socialized healthcare through rationing. There is no other way of doing it because the budget is fixed and healthcare needs are unlimited. You want to know what socialized healthcare means? Go to the Indian reservations where they already have it, or go to the Veterans Administration, which also has a form of it. Do you want the Veterans Administration healthcare being applied to every American, or the Indian reservation healthcare being applied to every American? Because that's what Bernie Sanders is promising America.
Well, let me ask you this, Trevor.
Let me say something, Jason, real quick. Thanks. And that's so true. And linked together with that is the fact that both historically and even now, Marxist socialism will not tolerate First Amendment freedoms. For example, every socialist tolerated everything, faith or religion or moral, and of course many of them are atheists, but they'll tolerate the occult and all these other things. So First Amendment freedom of speech is one of the first things always to go in a Marxist socialist so-called tolerant society. You can see that happening just right now in the United States.
Yeah. Well, see, if your government is supplying all your healthcare needs, and your health and your children depends on the government, are you going to criticize that government?
Well,
your
not.
kid, your 7-year-old child needs a hip replacement or needs a cancer treatment, and you're out there fighting government corruption. You're out there criticizing the corruption in the healthcare system.
Right.
How long do you think you're going to keep that up?
Right.
When they make the decision on your child's health or your wife's health or your own health, the government controls your health. That is the greatest way of shutting down your free speech, because you are not going to bite the hand that feeds you, and you're not going to bite the hand that provides your most valuable thing. Yeah. And the other little point is there is nothing more important in healthcare than the quality of that healthcare. Now, you cannot tell me that the quality is going to be the same when the government runs it. What do you think the quality would be like in food if government ran every restaurant in this country?
Right. Well, I'm glad you brought that up, Trevor, because first of all, I find the whole, Affordable Care Act, which, became to be known as Obamacare, I think the whole thing is a deception, because people hear that and they think it's what you're describing, that the government is going to pay for my health insurance. But that's actually not even the case. It was really just a giant government sales push for people to buy health insurance. It's so strange to me that, you go to a doctor, and depending on what health insurance you have, you may or may not be able to see that doctor. If you were driving down the street and you crashed your car into somebody, you're not going to say, oh, well, sorry, my car insurance only covers Fords. You're driving a Mercedes, so you're out of luck. It's really a big deception once again. Is that the corporate socialism that you're talking about, that it's just a giant sales pitch for the insurance companies?
Well, see, you've got two elements to this. You've got the insurance companies who think they're going to make a killing out of this, and you've got the Marxists and Democratic Socialists of America, through a guy called Quentin Young, who was one of their members, who was Obama's personal physician, by the way, and personal political mentor. They designed Obamacare, and I've got one of their members, Gerald Friedman, an economist from Massachusetts, saying, I love Obamacare, and the reason I love it is because it's going to fail. It cannot succeed. It must fail. And when it does, we're going to be ready with single payer. That's the goal. The government controls all of your health care. And the communists admit what they're doing, because I read this in the Communist Party newspaper. Why do we want socialist healthcare? In Britain before World War II, most of the British working class supported the Conservative Party. They were pro-God, king, and country. They didn't want any of this socialism garbage. But after World War II, they were given nationalised healthcare. And that shifted the British working class from a conservative point of view to a socialist point of view. That is why they are pushing this, because they're going to, when everybody's on government health care, that is going to shift everybody into a socialist, the large majority of people into a socialist point of view. This is not a healthcare issue. This is ultimately a political issue, and they have suckered the corporatists of the healthcare industry into thinking that this is going to be some big gravy train for them. Well, either way, whichever one comes out on top, the public is getting a real bad deal. Whether it goes the corporatist way, which I don't think it will, we're going to get screwed there. If it goes the single payer way, which is really the intention, I think we get doubly screwed there, because it takes away your freedom, the quality of your health care, your freedom of speech, and your independence as an individual. What better system could you have if you're a globalist or a socialist?
So insidious.
But it's very easy to sell, isn't it? They make healthcare so damn prohibitive that people either bankrupt themselves paying for it, or they can't afford it at all. So they say, well, look, we have to come along and help you. We'll just pay for all of your healthcare bills. And people go, hallelujah, I'll vote for that.
Right.
But you're trading away all your liberty and the quality of your care when you do that.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, and another thing, because this is something I monitor, a lot of people don't know, is with national health care, all of your information, which is your most private information, goes into a national unclassified open source database with all of your personal, most private health information accessible to Big Brother and anybody else who can get in that database. That's because that's your most secretly held personal information.
So for
that's great for blackmailing you again, isn't it?
Right.
You know, say if you had a little case of venereal disease that you didn't want everybody knowing about or something, you know, well, do you think they would ever use that against you? Surely not.
Yeah. Yes, or like the IRS model. What if they decide they get in charge of the health database and they decide that these conservative people, like the IRS did, really kind of don't deserve health care laws? They start manipulating it and actually denying health care like the IRS targeted citizens with taxes.
Right. Well,
and what are the big tech companies doing now with conservatives? You got Google and Facebook and Twitter, you know, denying a platform to conservatives and constitutionalists. You had the IRS trying to persecute conservatives and constitutionalists. So if the government has complete control of your health care, they're not going to try that, are they? They would never use that against you to take away your freedom or suppress you in any way. They would never do that, right? Because they're decent people, right? You give the government control of your health care, that is the nail in your coffin.
Yeah, it's over. Yep.
Wow. It's a very good explanation and a great answer. I mean, and you know, it's somewhat indirect, but a better answer than I anticipated. Communism and socialism are frankly the antithesis of Americanism. What we really want is a way to prevent pharmaceutical and other companies from manipulating our politicians by paying for their campaigns, and we want regulation over these companies so that the prices aren't, you know, they're monopolies, and now we've got Bayer buying Monsanto.
Well, I will contradict that a little bit.
Okay.
The big pharma loves regulation, loves it, because little pharma cannot compete.
Right.
Little pharma cannot break through, so you've got a few big companies controlling everything. I would say deregulate the healthcare sector so that you can bring a new drug or a new treatment onto the market just like that, just by like you can a new food product, and you just put it out there and you say you put it out there, you consume this product at your own risk. So you need tort reform. You think of all the treatments out there that we cannot access because nobody can afford the millions of dollars it takes to get through the regulatory process.
Right.
The big pharma loves this, so they get huge amounts of money, which they can then, they have a protected monopoly position, they can keep their competition out of the market, and then they can buy up politicians to make that carry on. I think all our problems stem from, most of our political problems stem from this relationship between big government and big business.
Yes.
Now, the answer isn't to regulate big business. The answer is to deregulate all business so businesses only survive when they're actually operating to the service of the public.
Right.
You know, if government was tiny, there'd be no point bribing it. If government had no power over the economy, what's the point of trying to buy politicians? They can't regulate in your favor anyway.
Right.
So businesses then are forced to compete on an honest and ethical basis. The only government involvement in business should be having the FBI investigate fraudsters and shut them down. Yes. Otherwise, let them go for it.
I think the FBI is too busy employing fraudsters to investigate
Well,
them.
yeah, I'm talking about if it was a good FBI like it used to be, you know.
But the regulation I was suggesting, Trevor, is to make it impossible, for instance, for Bayer Pharmaceuticals to own Monsanto, because now we seem to have this vertical integration where they can sell you poison food that's going to destroy your health and then sell you the pharmaceuticals that are intended to repair it. And they have so much money that, as you've said, they can buy politicians to make it legal to spray whatever crap they want onto vegetables. And I mean, this is the problem. I guess when I say regulation, I need to be a little more clear. I think we need less monopolies. We need less Googles controlling everything on the internet, less Amazon knocking out every retail thing.
Yeah. Well, see, we've got in a situation where we've got a cartelization going on, right? Because government got too big, big companies were able to buy favors, were able to buy special deals, were able to implement regulation that hurt their competitors. The ideal system to me is small government and free business that competes honestly. Yeah. So how do we get from there, from where we are, back to the ideal situation? I don't think it involves more regulation. I think generally involves less, though there is an argument to be made for certain antitrust in the short term antitrust legislation against some of the big companies who have got that way unethically.
Right.
I'm talking about some big pharma. I'm talking about Google and Amazon, and not so much Amazon, but Google and Facebook, etc., because they are actually a national security threat. Yeah. These organizations now.
I don't know if you gentlemen caught this.
More regulation doesn't normally help. It makes the problem worse.
Exactly. I don't know if you guys caught this earlier today in the Kavanaugh hearing, but Christine Blasey Ford spoke about her claustrophobia that caused her to insist that 2 front doors be installed in their home, something that's obviously highly unusual, and she made a particular point of saying that it upset her husband and the architects, and everybody basically thought this was a crazy idea. But she went on to say that the second door is the entrance for Google interns that they host in their home. I found that very strange.
Yeah, that is very interesting, because we know that Google has certainly been suppressing anybody who might subscribe to our views. And just a little bit about the woman too. She says she's claustrophobic, and that's the reason why she didn't want to fly to Washington. But they've since discovered that she's flown to Ecuador and, several
Fiji,
far off exotic places. That seemed to be okay. Maybe there was two doors on the aeroplane so she could get out quickly. I don't know.
Maybe they'll give her a parachute when she gets on board. Gentlemen, we've exhausted our hour, but it's been a fascinating conversation, Trevor. I hope you'll come back and join us in the future. Was there anything that either of you guys would like to share with us before we wrap it up for tonight?
Well, I'll just say one little thing. The last election in 2016 proved that voting does matter. Voting still can make a difference in America. So I'm urging anybody who wants to save this country, get out and vote in 2018, because otherwise we're going to have an impeached president and the whole agenda is going to come to a grinding halt. And that glimmer of hope we've had to turn this around will go out. If you can get it to the voting polls in 2018, get out and vote get rid of any socialists you possibly can.
And Kevin, any closing words? Kevin, can you hear me?
I may have lost you.
We've got you in slow motion, Kevin. So we'll pick up. We'll pick up with Kevin next week. I definitely want to remind people that they can.
Thumbs up if you can hear me.
You're on a very, it sounds slowed down to slow motion. So I don't know if we'll get you back before we end, but I definitely want people to check out TrevorLoudon.com. They can read Trevor's blog there. New Zeal. Trevor, of course, is the editor-in-chief of the New Zeal blog. And I think Kevin is back with us now. Kevin, can you hear me?
Yep.
There we go.
We're back. I just want to echo what Trevor just said. People get out and vote. They're entitled. This is one of the things the Kavanaugh hearings are about. They want to get a Democratic majority in the House and impeach for socialism in
You're a little bit spotty there, but I think Kevin is seconding what you've said, Trevor. We've got to get out there and vote. We've got to prevent socialists from taking over Congress. I don't think people are being given the full... Sorry about that, Kevin. We lost you there mid-sentence. It's a bit of a spotty connection, and I think the weather might be going south on you.
I think so, yeah.
All right, well, we'll pick up next week, but of course, people can go to fortheloveoffreedom.net. If you haven't already read From the Company of Shadows, this is the place to get it from. You're going to get the decoding information. You'll receive a signed copy from Kevin. I want to thank Kevin and Trevor for joining me tonight. This has been another episode of the Intelligence Assessment with Kevin Shipp. And for the viewers that are joining us on patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth, I do want to encourage everyone to go to patreon.com/Kevin_Shipp with 2 P's. We wouldn't have this show without Kevin, and thank you very much for joining me, Kevin, and creating this program. Trevor, fabulous to meet you. Excellent insights. I'm learning more about the insidious way that this socialist agenda is being foisted upon the American people without us even knowing it, and they're going to the college students and high school students with the anti-gun agenda, with the free money agenda, but it seems to be a hidden ploy to deceive us. So we'll be back soon and speak to Trevor again. I want to thank everybody for joining me. I'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you, Trevor.
Thanks so much, Kevin, and thanks so much, Jason. Great to be on.
Wonderful to see you both. Thanks, gentlemen.